idea of a university that is the internal systems on how things work to be as accessible to as many people as possible. I mean, you think when Uncle Glenn came to Munn, there wasn't even wheelchair ramps. There was one elevator, and you wouldn't think of ever going into almost any building now without a ramp. It's unthinkable.
Welcome to Some Stutter Law, Newfoundland and Labrador's first podcast about living with communication disorders. It is a production of the Communication Collaborative. My name is Greg O'Grady. I am a person who stutters and your host. Some Stutter Law aims to rebuild confidence and hope for people who live with communication differences by dismantling myths, stigmas, stereotypes, and barriers. For more information about the Communication Collaborative or this podcast, you can find us on substutterlaw.ca. If you only get one thing from this podcast, we hope it's this. It's okay to stutter and it's okay to communicate differently. It's not how we communicate that's important, it's the message that's important. Today, Some Stutter Law welcomes Jason Carey and Hannah Blundon. Jason and Hannah joins me today for a conversation about the Roy Blundon Centre, which is located in Memorial University. The Roy Blundon Centre was established at Memorial University in February 1992 and is dedicated to the memory of Roy Blundon, a former Memorial University student and resident of B.Ed, Newfoundland and Labrador. Glenn is remembered for his advocacy, leadership, and commitment to equality and accessibility issues. First, Jason and Hannah, let me applaud you and staff at the Roy Blundon Centre for your dedication and for your amazing outreach work being accomplished in helping to bridge access for students with disabilities who otherwise face barriers of access to achieve their fullest academic potential at Memorial University. The old African proverb now comes to mind: it takes the village. Now, a little about Jason and a little about Hannah. Jason is the manager of accessibility services at the Blundon Centre on Memorial University's St. John's campus. The Blundon Centre is the disability service office for the St. John's campus and supports students with disabilities. They work to ensure equitable and meaningful access for students attending Memorial University. They work with other stakeholder groups on the campus, including staff and faculty. Jason has also a Per Course Instructor in the Faculty of Education for the last decade, where he has taught in both the Bachelor of Education and Bachelor of Special Education programs. Jason lives in Paradise, Newfoundland and Labrador with his wife Emily and their two boys, Nathan, 17, and Tyson, who's 11. Hannah, she, her, is a skilled and experienced marketing and communications professional. She is an advocate for women's and genders diverse individual rights and accessibility within the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Hannah is currently working at Memorial University as a communications advisor with student life. She holds a Bachelor of Business Administration from MUN, a graduate diploma in Public Relations and Communications Management from McGill University, and is working on her Master's of Arts in Communications at Mount Sinai Vincent University. Hannah is an active member in her community and is committed to continuous learning. She is the women's representative for the St. John's East Kitty Bitty Liberal Party district. She is on the board of directors of Violence Prevention Avalon East and was a recent participant in the Future of the Vote program held by Equal Voice. Well, first, Jason and Hannah, after reading both your bios, how do you both take care of yourselves? You both are very busy people.
Staying busy is important.
Yep.
Okay, that's good. Now, before I start, let me tell you a little story about an experience I had with the Roy Blundon Centre. When the Newfoundland and Labrador Stuttering Association was first established, we're going back in 2019. Myself and another board of director, started to do a road show, and and I knew nothing about the Blundon Centre before then. So we attended a meeting at the centre, and there's a group of people there, staff, I believe some volunteers. And one of our projects that year was doing a fundraiser called A Million Things I Need to Say. And this is a walk and roll for stuttering awareness. And I distributed some pamphlets in the room. And so I was talking about the walk and run. And then I realized, and it really surprised me, that one of the participants in the room was in a wheelchair. And that really hit home when I realized, my God, what is this person feeling, given that I'm calling it a walk and run? So from that I sort of, after that meeting, I went home and I decided to change it to walk, run, and roll, just to make sure that we were inclusive. But it's amazing that how sort of something like that, one takes for granted until it sort of hits home in reality. So, and this is an annual event now, was started in St. John's in 2019, in Newfoundland, Labrador in 2019, and it's been running now. I started up in Toronto, and it's in its 10th year now. So,
Wow.
anyhow, so we have a lot to talk about this morning. Hannah, as Glenn's great niece, can you share a little about Glen Roy with our listening audience?
So I never got to meet my Uncle Glenn. But even though I still feel like I always knew him based on all the stories that everyone talked about growing up. So he was born with muscular dystrophy and was in a wheelchair for the majority of his life. He wanted to go to university. Most people told him not to bother because, what's a kid in a wheelchair going to do at university that's not accessible? But he really wanted to go, and family let him, and he had siblings and stuff in St. John's and lots of friends that had also gone to university. So he did have a really good support system going into school, and he was a resilient guy, and he wasn't going to let anything stop him. So the university wasn't accessible at all. They had to put him in Hatcher House, which was a female only residence on campus at the time, because it was the only one that had a wheelchair and access to the tunnels. So, you can only imagine being the only guy in an all women's residence. I mean, I'm sure he didn't mind that, but um, it can be isolating when you feel like you're alone and you come to this brand new university and you want the full experience and you can't get that. So, he didn't let that stop him. He made sure that he got what he needed and was able to develop Mod 2, which was Memorial's organization for the disabled, and
Mm,
through that was able to advocate for accessibility services on campus. So him and any other students who were in wheelchairs or had mobility restrictions couldn't get to a lot of their classes. So a lot of the profs were able to record lectures so that they could watch them on their own time. Um, and so yeah, so it was through that and through the help of his peers and his educators, and he made sure that he got what he wanted, and anything that he asked for pretty much got. No one really could say no to him, which really shows his resilience and the desire to make the place more accessible, not just for himself, but anyone after him. And was really a fan favorite around campus. It's been really nice working at the university now. A lot of people I've met knew him, went to school with him, and it's nice to hear their stories of him as well from his time at MUN, and that, he was a force to be reckoned with, held a strong presence on campus, and really advocated for those with disabilities.
Wonderful, my God. Well, Glenn, Glenn is definitely a role model for the the you know the disabled community. He certainly is. Jason and Hannah, what is one thing that comes to your mind when you think about the Glen Royal Blundon Centre? What comes to your mind when you think about it?
Oh my gosh. Hannah, do you want to go? You want to go first?
Sure. Um, I think of, inclusion, which is really nice. Uncle Glenn came to the university when it wasn't very inclusive, and he built a whole community around that. So it's really special to me. I love being able to see it every day and to see the work that it does. Um, and it's just amazing.
Hmm.
So I think of I think of the 2,000 students that we support now, um, and how that first winter, that February of 1992, there were 32 students supported by the Blundon Centre, and just this past fall we surpassed 2,000 students, um, in supporting them in a variety of ways. And I think also too, um, the Blundon Centre represents one way that Memorial assists and provides support for students, but I think the university in itself is making strides, to make sure that it's not just the Blundon Centre's work. Like, this is important work, and we're at the center of this for supporting students, but this isn't all our responsibility. So it's those 2,000 students, but also the 1,000 more, 2 or 3 or potentially 4,000 other students who live with or experience disability who don't register with our office. So I think about those
Mm.
students as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean that that is quite quite a large disabled student population within. I mean who are self-disclosed as disabled 2,000. Like and Jason, when you mentioned there may be about 4,000 and some do not disclose, why do you think that is?
So there's a variety of reasons. I mean, this is a very well known phenomena in disability services, that the majority of students living on post secondary campuses don't register. It could mean that they don't need our support. Many students living with disabilities do quite well without us. Thank you very much. And so they don't need that support. There is unfortunately still some stigma around disability. Um, Despite efforts in the K-12 system and certainly at Memorial to be inclusive and equitable, there are still some barriers around that disclosure and being comfortable with that. And
Mm-hmm.
um, I think one of the other things that we hear from students is during their K to 12 journey, they really didn't have much choice. They were they had these special education services. And when they come to Memorial, that's an opportunity for a fresh start, and they can kind of come to Memorial and blend in, sometimes for the first time. And so
Mm-hmm.
they don't reach out, and some come to us later, maybe in their third or fourth or even their fifth year or grad studies.
Hmm.
But there's a whole host of reasons why students don't register with us, and which again is important that as an institution we acknowledge those students so that we can make sure that it's not just our office that provides that support and champions disability, but acknowledges that there are students who don't register
Hmm.
with us who require
Hmm.
that level of understanding and support too.
Hmm. It is interesting how you mentioned that not all students self disclose, and this also also relates to the people who stutter community as well, because the board is split on whether or not stuttering is a disability. And but this has been a long standing this discussion over years. And for for some reason, no reason or another, I had never thought about stuttering you know, being a disability on until I be, became aware and involved in the stuttering community. And talking to to various people that stutter. And we all know that stuttering comes in different degrees. There's mild stuttering, there's severe stuttering, and there's also covert stuttering, which was my history for years and years. I tried to hide my stuttering, but it is it is one area is stuttering a disability is a very sensitive area for many people. Yeah, so it's interesting. So how did you both become involved in the Blundon Center? And Hannah, with with you now, as because of your great uncle.
Hannah,
And how
Hannah
about
was born
you?
into it.
Yeah,
You were born.
yeah, so like I said, I always heard about it growing up, and then when I got into MUN, um, I was told, like, "Oh, like, the Blundon Center, like, you can go see it and go check it out," and my cousin had worked there, so I knew that there were opportunities to work as a student with the Blundon Center. So my very first semester, I went in and I was like, "I'm Hannah Blundon," and they were like, "Cool, okay, you should apply to work here," and I was like, "That would be amazing, that's exactly what I want." And so I worked there for 3 years in my undergrad, and I also have used the services that the Blundon Center provided. I struggled with test anxiety and I have ADHD, so being able to use the services as well, um, was incredibly helpful with my education.
Okay,
And I
great.
guess for me, this is my profession. I'm a teacher, a special ed teacher by training, and had worked, in many different sectors as a teacher and an educator. Um, and I always, I have two young kids with disabilities. And Hannah and I were talking just recently about how our families viewed disability, and it was something that we didn't skirt around. And the words disabilities were used, but we our family saw the strengths in that, and valued that in our families. And I guess I brought that to my work, and this position was always something I secretly wanted to do. And then 3 years ago, when I was given the opportunity to do it, I jumped at the chance. So it really is a passion for me, and it's it's just a passion. I really like
Mm,
this work. Really like this work.
wonderful. And I'm wondering, Jason, how how many staff work at the London Center? How many staff do you have?
Yeah, so we have, I guess, 8 core staff, professional staff. So that includes myself, and we have some accessibility advisors who do the day-to-day work with students and communicating with instructors. We have some administrative staff, testing coordinators, and then we have a couple of dozen student staff that that help us with accommodated testing, but 8 core professional staff now.
Great. And so, Hannah, you mentioned that you worked there as when you were a student. Now, Jason, do you still hire students on at
Oh
the
yes,
center?
oh yes.
Okay.
Yep, students have
Yeah.
been instrumental with our exam supervision and proctoring for a number of years now.
Okay. Okay. And
Yep.
that that would be the key role. Would they be be supports for students with disability. Then.
Yep, and
Mm.
we've had some student employees who do tours for students in the summer. So students that are
Okay.
transitioning from high school that want to come in and get a specialized tour of campus. We've had students in those roles as well. We've got students who do research for us and get involved in program planning, and we
Okay.
really value our student employees.
Okay. And well, it's interesting. This, this is, this is one of my questions. Orientation. How 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 are disabled students orientated within MUN? Because I'm sure, it's, as you mentioned, it's a huge transition, especially when you're coming from high school.
Yeah, it is a huge transition. So we usually start. I know some of the disability community organizations have kind of their own transition programs. Canadian Hard of Hearing Association, for example, has I think a program in the summer where they bring students from all over the province in to get acclimated to the city and to the university. What we try to do is we work with the school district. So beginning, I believe, in May month, we'll start to do some virtual sessions for families and students across the province to just learn that this is a thing. I mean, we have students and families who don't even know you can get accommodations or supports at the post secondary level. So just providing them with some of that information, and then doing our one-on-one intakes for students that are coming into Memorial. So we've already had our first intake for fall 2023. So this is a student who is really on the ball and really wants to start off on the right foot. So we'll do more of
Mm,
those throughout the spring and summer, and whatever students need. Again, whether
mm,
it's a tour, if they want to come in and meet with our staff, or just tour the facility, we do whatever we can to minimize that transition.
mm. Okay, great. And so, Hannah, when you worked at the Blundon Center as a student, what was your experience overall working at?
So I did an 80-hour MUSEP, so it was an 80-hour student job, and my biggest roles were invigilating for tests. I would scribe for tests, read for tests, with individual students. So pretty much just being a support wherever I could. I would run tests back and forth to different departments, pick up tests from profs. So I really got to know the campus through that. But it was really nice to be able to
Mm,
support those students. And it was, nice to know that I can also avail of these services, and it was a completely judgment-free zone, and everyone is just there to help you and give you a better university experience.
mm, great. So, Jason, how is the Blundon Center and its services promoted within MUN? I mean, does the Blundon Center host in-house information sessions at MUN or at the Blundon Center, or because I'm sure that once the Blundon Center is promoted, I mean, students, students that that do not that do not disclose their disability may down the road you know take advantage of being involved in the Blundon Center. So how how do you promote the center?
So we're involved in all orientation sessions for incoming students, multiple orientation sessions. Different faculties have welcome events or orientation events. And so we never say no. We're often invited to any number of welcoming events or orientation events, so we always commit to those. We also know that at those orientation events, there's a lot coming at new students, and so they may not remember everything. So we try to maintain, and Hannah said she's helping us with this now, a web presence and a presence on the university websites, so that students, whenever they're ready, um, can know we're there. We do frequent communications throughout the semester to the entire university community, the student population, to let them know we're here and what we do, um, just to make sure that students know we're here, and it's never too late. Some students, we don't want student to think because I didn't come during my first semester, that I can't come or it's too late. And so the message is it's never too late. And as I said earlier, we have students that are in their fourth year, fifth year, graduate students who reach out for the first time, and that's wonderful to see.
Mm. Does does the Blundon Centre and provide any financial subsidies for disabled students, for example, like transportation allowance or food when they're on campus? Are there any subsidies available?
Yeah, so the Blundon Center doesn't directly, but we work with students. There are federal grants and provincial grants. There's bursaries available. There are scholarships available through Memorial and national organizations. So we work with students to tap into some of those funding streams.
Hmm. Okay, great. So what do you both see as a long-term vision for the Blundon Center? What would be your hope or vision?
I'll go first, Anna.
I
Okay.
know you have big hopes and dreams.
Well, I do have big hopes and dreams, and that's my downfall. But here's the reality. For those of us that work and live, in the disability community, within the disability community, we know that, first of all, persons with disabilities is the largest minority group in the world, and we also know that it's um, maybe the only minority group that any of us could at any moment join. And we know that it's increasing. The number of folks living with and experiencing disability is increasing as the population gets older. We're seeing that as well. And our numbers at the Blundon Center, I mean, 2,000 students. And that's probably doubled in the last 5 years. So we know we aren't going anywhere anytime soon. Um, and really, our services will continue to be needed by large numbers of students. But I think what you will see, and this is my hope, I guess, um, is that Memorial, like other institutions, will look at its programs, its courses, its physical structures, and really look at how we can design all of these things for use by most individuals, right? So looking at frameworks like universal design, inclusive design, so that maybe um, folks won't need a particular accommodation; it'll just be built into the environment or into the program.
Mm,
Because really, the numbers are just staggering, um, and there's no end in sight. And so from a sustainability perspective, we're going to have to think a little more upstream about how we design our environments and our curricula to meet the demand, the increasing diversity of certainly our student population, and not just through disability, but other lenses as well. So I think, but we're not going anywhere. I think we're going to be here for a while, and the need for accommodation and student support is going to be even greater going forward. Hannah,
Mm.
what are your goals for the future? What are your visions?
Ah, I would love the idea of a university that is structurally designed, and, like, even just the internal systems on how things work to be as accessible to as many people as possible. I mean, you think when Uncle Glenn came to MUN, there wasn't even wheelchair ramps. There was one elevator, and
Mhm.
you wouldn't think of ever going into almost any building now without a ramp. It's unthinkable. So I think there are so many ideas that of what I guess universal design should be. And I know to rebuild a whole building is expensive, but if you think about it, if you invest in it, then more people can
Mhm.
come
Mhm.
here, and then we have more students and a more inclusive community. And again, like the internal systems, like the processes on how things work, and you can even think of accessibility with online and within the digital world too. There's lots of things, even just accessible websites, things that the university can continue to do, that don't necessarily mean taking down a building and building a new one.
Mm. Mhm. Mm. So one, so I'm assuming now, listening to you both, that one of the largest challenges, the funding just to make all these changes to become more, you know, more inclusive. So, Jason, is this along? This is a huge part of your job, is to get that piece of the funding pie. I'm sure you spend a lot of time trying to get funding.
Yeah, I do. And also, I spend a lot of time telling other people to find funding that they can improve upon accessibility, and that this isn't just a Blundon Center challenge, or this isn't just right. And so, one of the things I think our accessibility policy does very well is it highlights that this is a shared responsibility, right? So not everything that impacts on disability related challenges or accessibility has to be in my office. Obviously we're a huge
Mm,
champion, and we support those efforts. But that's one area where I think the university is really starting to focus. And you're likely aware of the accessibility legislation that came into effect. I think it was December of 2021. So we're going to have a legislative responsibility here to outline, where we are as an institution with regards to accessibility and disability access, and to have a plan going forward about how we're going to address those deficits. Right. So in the short term, and
mhm,
and I guess the long term as well.
mm. So, Jason, when you talk about shared, uh, shared responsibility, you're also talking about you just encouraging the stakeholders you work with to work with you.
Yeah. So our office has a role. The institution in general has a role. Students have a role to play. Instructors have a role. All those stakeholder groups have a role in providing support and developing these inclusive and equitable environments. And it can't just fall on one person or
Hmm.
one office, um, which I
Correct.
think is
Yeah.
really the
Mhm.
sustainable way forward. Right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So do you meet with the meet with some of these stakeholders on like on a regular basis, just to discuss all this as a group, and to plan so that.
Yeah. So there's lots going on at Memorial. There's accessibility committees, a larger kind of university accessibility committee that I'm invited to. I don't lead it, nor should I, but I'm one stakeholder, on that group. and I'm constantly meeting with instructors, meeting with entire faculties to talk about how we're supporting students. Um, and the students that we support, these aren't Blundon students. These are Memorial students who happen to be supported by our office, but the library supports them and the registrar's office supports them. And so really, having a look at how all of these particular units, these services and supports provide supports for all students.
Okay. So, Hannah, do you work with Jason on various projects then, given your field of communications?
Yeah, so it's really cool my role now. So I'm a communications advisor with Student Life, and the Blundon Center is part of the Student Life portfolio. So it's, kind of a full circle moment where I can use, my actual education to support what the Blundon Center does and help them with communications and website building. And when it comes to just promoting the services that they offer. Like, I mean, today I was talking with Jason, and we have a post scheduled to go on social media tomorrow saying that the Blundon Center has availability to chat with students if they're interested in learning more on the services they offer. So it's nice that I can support the center in another role
Excellent.
and make sure that students are aware of everything that they offer.
Okay. Okay. Excellent then. Excellent. So, Jason, how do you work with families now? Like, how do you not only support the students with disabilities but also their families? Does families sort of come to you, or with any concerns or?
Yeah, they do. Again, it's a transition for families too. And many families, we strongly encourage families to reach out. In fact, the highlight of my day is talking to families and talking to instructors, both of those things. But it's different because their children now are, in the eyes of the institution, are adults. And so we have to be very mindful of privacy and confidentiality. Um, we encourage families to be involved, however, their student wants them to be involved. We do sessions, as I said, we do sessions leading into the end of the school year so that families can learn more about the services that we provide, ask those questions. Um, and really the only thing we can't do when it comes to families is sharing information about their children without them being present, um, because of privacy and confidentiality. So for
Hmm.
some families that's hard because and again, having two kids myself with disabilities and having to navigate the school district and the school, parents do a lot in the K-12 system by design and some by choice. But for the first time, some of these families, they have to let their children navigate these waters, primarily, and certainly as the lead, but often next to or with their child. So for us, we encourage families to come to meetings, to come to those intake meetings. They're an incredible source of information and support for students. But it is quite limited compared to the involvement they've had in the K-12 system.
Hmm. Hmm. When you talk about e-intake meetings, would they? I mean, what would this involve with the student and or the families? You talk about the intake. Does the intake meetings happen? Before the semester starts, or is it something that is ongoing?
Yeah, so that intake meeting is our initial contact with the student to learn more about them as a learner and what their expectations are and their goals are in post-secondary, how we can support them, what their journey has been like, discuss accommodations if they want accommodations in post-secondary. What have those accommodations looked like? How have they been successful? Um, Again, talking with families and getting more information about some of the strengths and maybe some of the challenges, and then working to get a plan in place, a support plan to support their time here at Memorial.
Mm. And how 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 often is this support plan like reviewed or evaluated? And who actually does it then?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we typically, for incoming students, I mean it varies, but for incoming students, we typically set it for a year, knowing that students can reach out at any time. So when students come to our office, they get assigned an advisor, and that's their person for their time at Memorial. So anything comes up, any changes that they want to make to their support plan, or any challenges they have, they get in touch with this particular person who'll be able to meet with them and walk through any of the changes that they want or any of the challenges they're having. But we typically um, look at a year. We check in with the student.
Mm,
Anything we need to change. Are they getting the accommodations? Are there accommodations maybe that um, would further support their access? And once the advisors have a good indication that either the condition is stable, the accommodations are working and are stable. An advisor may set it for 2 years or another year to check back in, but we do try to schedule those touch points so that we can make sure that if something's not working, we can address it relatively quickly instead of just kind of set it and forget
mm,
it type mentality. Because we know that students, historically, when things don't go well, if they don't have a touch point, likely won't raise it and might just go without those accommodations or not have that support. And that's obviously we want to avoid that where we can.
hmm. Okay. And so when when you talk about an advisor, are you talking about someone, one of the staff people at the Blundon Centre, or is this more of would or would this be one of the instructors? Would they be classified as
No, this is
advisors as well?
yeah. Yep. No, this is one of our staff. So our we have four
Okay.
accessibility advisors, and they're just disability service professionals that work one on one with students during their journey here at MUN.
Okay. Now, I appreciate and acknowledge that not notwithstanding how hard the Blundon Centre staff and instructors work, and that they try, you all are not miracle workers. So, what are some of the challenges, concerns, advice from instructors, disabled students at the Blundon, and but also meeting their needs. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, things are not always rosy, but like how how do you support the some of the challenges and concerns voiced by disabled students and the instructors, like in terms of supports.
Yeah. So again, each student has an advisor, and that advisor's name is made known to faculty. Um, we have a number of faculty and instructors, and one of the challenges is getting helping them understand how they can implement some of these accommodations, how they can design these courses more inclusively, but also maintain high standards, of course, academic integrity, and to work through some of those challenges that are related to um, supporting students. So we hear from faculty members all the time, and I can tell you, taking these calls, these aren't folks who say, "Why should I do this?" Thank goodness for the most part, we're beyond that. That instructors value um, the diversity and the variability that our students come with. The questions we get are, "How do I do this?" And
Hmm.
so we provide one-on-one support for faculty. We also do professional development sessions for faculty about
Okay.
designing inclusive curricula. How can they build universal design into their course design or into their course delivery? And it's not always perfect. Um, being an instructor myself, I don't always get it right. It's not perfect, but I think students value when you make an effort and when you make changes on the fly and acknowledge, like, "Oh, yep, that wasn't great." I think students value that, and so
Mm.
rewarding the efforts that instructors make, and just trying to in the universal design world, we call it plus one thinking, right? So doing one thing different, do one thing different tomorrow, do one thing different the next day, and I think at some point you'll have a pretty good product. And so just valuing that type of thinking is important.
Mm. Uh, 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 Jason, are there any, any, are, are there any accommodations that one cannot accommodate?
It's a good question.
No. This,
So
I know this is this is a $64 question.
yeah, yep. No, it's a good question. So really, we start from a place of it's case by case. We look at these accommodation requests. We assess them on face value. But there's a number of things that we have to go through to assess whether an accommodation is reasonable, right? So we know that we have to offer reasonable accommodations. So when we look at a particular accommodation request, some of the things that we have to consider are things like cost, as far as undue hardship. That's usually the easiest. That's never usually an issue. The other things we look at are academic integrity, right? So we know that an accommodation can't change the outcome. It can change the process of how students meet the outcomes, but it can't fundamentally or substantially change the outcomes of a course. And so those are things that we would consider. We would work with faculty on. Other things like safety,
Mm.
we would have to take into consideration. So what are the safety factors here? What are the risks for the student requesting the accommodation, for other students? Um, are there program regulations? So, for example, this afternoon I spent 3 hours with the faculty of medicine talking about how we provide reasonable accommodations to medical learners, and for them, it's very similar to the process I just outlined, but they also have a licensing body or several licensing bodies, and so we have to factor in some of those regulations. So um, there are certain accommodations depending on the course, depending on the program, that may not be, at least as requested, reasonable. But what we do in situations like that is we try to work with the student, with the instructor, with the program to find what would work, what would be a reasonable accommodation. It might not be perfect. It might not be the accommodation that was requested, but how can we support that student's requests and those students' needs as best we can, um,
Mm.
and that sometimes takes some back and forth, some negotiation or discussion and collaboration with
Hmm.
a number of stakeholder groups. Is that long enough answer for you?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Oh, that's fine. Jason, I always like these detailed answers, and our and and our listeners also appreciate the detailed answers. Uh, 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 Hannah, I'm wondering when you were a student, a paid student support, you know, what would be your role to help help like accommodate this disabled student within a classroom setting? You know what I mean? Like in terms of like work, in introducing this student within a general class without upsetting the whole class. You know what I mean? Like it is a very delicate uh, situation.
Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. I think you froze up a little bit, and I didn't hear the last part of your question.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry. Okay. So yeah,
It's okay.
how how is oh no how is a disabled student like accommodated within a classroom setting. Depending on the degree of disability.
Yeah,
Is
so
there a
when I worked
process?
there and when I used their services, so there is a small classroom area within the Blundon Centre that accommodates a couple students. And then other than that, they also use other classrooms on campus that are available at the time, so they'll book them out so that we can have, students who typically just might their accommodation is extra time and a quiet space. So the biggest part is making sure that they have the time that they need and the quiet space that they need. So the classrooms are never overly full. There's never students clanging bags and books around and making a racket. Um, Making sure that, you know, they can write their exam in the best space possible. And that's one thing that I guess to kind of tie it back to something I would like to see is that, my biggest accommodation was I needed extra time, especially when it came to like math-based courses. And it doesn't, I understand that I shouldn't take me 6 hours to write an exam, but what I can write in 2 hours on a Math 1000 exam doesn't necessarily show what I know. So I would love to see professors accommodate the time when they're creating their exams, um, so that a lot of the students who do use the Blundon Center for the extra time accommodation, are able to write their exams in their classrooms with their peers and kind of takes, I guess, a little weight off of the Blundon Center accommodating those students in that sense, which they do an amazing job anyways.
Obviously, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Jason, I'm wondering now. Do you sort of based on your history at MUN now and with with the Blundon Center, do you go into high schools and work with the teachers, the disabled students to to start preparing for the transition to university life, and if so, when do you do it, and how how is it done? Or do you feel that 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 there's more work that needs to be done within the educational system to work with the disabled? I mean, this is a huge question. I know.
It is huge. Thanks for that one. Um, no, it's a great question, and yeah, we are very aware of the transition that the huge transition from high school to post secondary, and I think for the non-disabled folks, so for neurotypical folks, that transition is difficult. I think for disabled students, not all, um, but for many, just trying to navigate a new system, um, a system that really puts them at the center now. This isn't their parents. This isn't grade 13, right? This isn't just the next
Mhm.
grade. There's a lot of those challenges. And so we do work with, as I said earlier, we work with um, the Department of Education, we work with the district. We try to get out there in those sessions in May, April and May, to really have families know that we're here, um, to know what the Blundon Center is and the work that we do, so that students know we're here, that families know that we're here to support. Um, and we absolutely are constantly looking at how we can do better with that. Um, and so, again, during the pandemic, we started doing these virtual sessions. Before that, I think it was before my time, but I think they would just hold sessions here in St. John's, but that really wasn't great for families that were, in Labrador or anywhere outside the metro area. So we got some really great uptake on that. So we continue to do that now. Um, and again, I think as far as what the school district is doing, um, they've got their own challenges, and I know they're trying to
Mhm.
prepare students for post secondary life, for those that want to pursue post secondary. I think for many students to know that accommodations are available at post secondary is news to them, right? So they don't even know that accommodations or there's any formal supports, at Memorial. So trying to get that message to
Mm.
students, to get that message to families, um, to get them in. Like I said, we already
Mhm.
had our first meeting with a student that's coming in the fall of 2023, and so that's really early, which is great.
Mhm.
So they likely have a support plan ready to go. All they have to do is get here in September and communicate that plan to their instructors. But we're
Mm.
always looking at how we can break down those barriers with regards to the transition. And I think also since the pandemic, students might be even less prepared uh, for um, for post-secondary studies, and again, not just students with disabilities, but not having those terminal exams, public exams. Not that they're perfect, but we have students that come to Memorial now who haven't had an exam in 2 or 3 years, so that can be really challenging.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, so Jason, when do you normally start working with the teachers before, like, is it early in the school year, or is this an ongoing basis to start to promote the services of the Blundon Centre, just to do just to help with the orientation? Do you bring some students from the classroom from the high school over to MUN for like a day or orientation? I mean, so when do you and your staff starts to work with the teachers?
So it varies. I know obviously the Blundon Center has been around for 30 years. This year, the 30th anniversary. And so hopefully,
Oh,
the
congratulations!
the school, yeah, fall of '92 is when we opened and started supporting students. But so hopefully, the fact that we're not new, and that the staff and teachers at schools are informing students that are supported by student support services that our services are available, um, and um, and then really. It's really up to each individual school or teacher. We do have students who might have some complex challenges who reach out early and say, "I'm working with a student." Um, we see this in some of the students with sensory impairments. So, some students who are culturally deaf or hard of hearing, students who are working with, maybe a DHH or itinerant, a deaf and hard of hearing itinerant, or a student who's working with maybe an itinerant for visual impairment, they might reach out and say, hey, can I bring the student? Can we kind of do some of this support more formally? But most of the other students or guidance counselors or IRTs will, usually in the spring of the year, we'll just make sure that families are given the documentation that they need, the information about. So the Blundon Centre supports students on the St. John's campus. We also have a disability coordinating center at the Marine Institute, and we have a disability coordinating center on the Granville campus. So if students are
Mm-hmm.
going to either of those campuses, they also have their own accessibility services team. So just making sure that families are aware of that, that students are aware of that, and who those folks are, so that
Mm-hmm.
they can reach out, but they don't have to, and that's sometimes frustrating for families as well.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking now, the the Newfoundland Labrador Stuttering Association is like has you know has has started to work with the school system to to provide more supports and services for students who stutter. And because I mean, there's there's there is little little known about about people who stutter, and little attention is being paid to stuttering within our province. But I'm thinking now that there is less 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 attention being paid to the mental health of students who stutter. Not only students who stutter, but people who stutter in general. So it is a double-edged sword. There's there's little understanding, understanding about stuttering, but there's also less understanding about the mental health component of stuttering. But now I'm thinking about the disabled students within the high school setting who who will who who will be soon graduating. Just to make this transition from high school to MUN, what do you know? What do what mental health supports do you have in place? Because this is huge. Besides the physical or the physical disability, I think Hannah may be able to weigh in here as well, because when you work with students who who also or were transitioning, what what supports are available for the mental health, or to to help to to identify high risk students in that area of mental health. I know it's a long-winded question, and this this is a very touchy area, the mental health component.
No, it's important. So I'll just weigh in, and so our Student Wellness and Counseling Center um, on the St. John's campus provides counseling services for students, also medical services as well. But so they have a number of psychologists on staff. They have a number of physicians on staff, a psychiatrist on staff, an adolescent developmental specialist, I believe, and also I think 4 or 5 now. Wellness navigators is what they call them, but they're essentially counselors. And so
Mm,
these are services available to students as well for single sessions, long-term supports, referrals for, more in-depth counseling or therapy through the psychologist, or, even, again, the psychiatrist that's on staff there as well. So they've got a number of folks that are able to work with students around mental health, mental illness, mental well-being, in addition to the supports that we provide. Yeah. Hannah, what did I
abs-
forget?
Um, well, when I did my undergrad and I was living on campus, they had counselors for students who were living in residence. I'm not sure if they're still there. I would hope that they would be. But that was a really nice resource to have for students living in residence. You could just walk over to Hatcher House and chat with someone. They did drop-in services, so you didn't necessarily have to make an appointment for an advance. If you were dealing with something right away, you could just go and talk with someone, and that was definitely a huge help for a lot of students.
Mm. Do does MUN or the Blundon Centre have a speech language pathologist? I mean, on like as resource or on staff? Jason, do you know?
We don't know.
Or
We don't have
so
any
would that be a
any
different? No.
no.
Okay. Okay. Okay, well, so Jason and Hannah, how, like, is there anything that the Newfoundland Labrador Southern Association, some sort of law, the communication collaborative can do to support you at the Blundon Center? And Mon, is there anything that we can help with?
I guess just help spread the word that we're here, that we can support students however they wish. And again, many students choose not to self-identify and come forward and to go through that process. But we're here. And I think the other thing is that we do work with administration and other stakeholder groups on campus to make sure that accessibility, equity, inclusion is um, that everyone is working on that. It's not just in student life or student wellness or the Blundon Center. That everyone's got a role to play. So again, we're not perfect, um, but hopefully students would be not just accepted but valued, and given the supports from any part of our university, whatever their particular need was. So keep sharing the news about our wonderful institution.
Oh, for sure, for sure. My God. Well, Jason and Hannah, so do, do, do you have any last thoughts last thoughts to share about the Blondin Center? Anything that our listeners would like to know?
We've been here for 30 years. This is our 30th anniversary. We're very excited to have been around this long and to really carry that ethos that Glenn had. I didn't meet Glenn either. I was before my time, but um, I think he's in everything that we do, and we do try to be very student centered and supportive, um, and we keep trying to improve every day. Hannah, what about you?
Yeah, I would say, my Uncle Glenn, he was just a regular guy who wanted an education and he made it happen for himself. And, you know, as much as an advocate as he was, he also just wanted to live his life, have all that university experience, and he made it happen for him, and he's continued to make it happen for thousands of students since then.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, no, and one last question. Where is the Blundon Center? Because when I went there to talk about the Newfoundland Labrador Southern Association, we met in the three-tier building. Is that the Blundon Center still? We're going back a few years ago now. Where exactly is it?
Yeah. So yep. So we're located on the fourth floor of the University Center, and
Okay.
yeah. So the fourth floor. Yeah. UC
On the
4000.
fourth floor. And okay, and this is the three-tier building on an angle.
Yep. Yep. It's actually
Okay,
5
great.
tiers or 6
Oh, it's
tiers.
about
There's 6 there's 6
okay,
floors, but
There's 6, yeah.
we're on the 4th floor. Yeah.
excellent.
And we're
Well,
also available virtually too, Greg. I think we're available. We have a number of students at there's a new nursing program at Gander site and Grand Falls site and I think Happy Valley Goose Bay. We support those students as well, so we're available virtually for support as well. So if you physically can't get to the Blundon Centre, we can connect with you virtually.
hmm. Now, my last question is still, bo- both of you are very busy people. How do you both self-care?
Hannah's probably better at it than I am. Hannah, do you wanna go with that?
Um, I like to spend time with my dog and my boyfriend and just hang out and relax. Trying to get a full 8 hours of sleep every night. That is
Mm,
key, and drink lots of water. So, with
yeah.
all that, you can take over the world.
Yeah.
And how about you, Jason, with the family and everything?
Yeah,
Uh,
so just being with family and trying to get outside when I can. Get 8 hours of sleep where I can. Magnesium really helps with that, so I've learned. And um, yeah, just spend time with family.
mm. Well, as I mentioned again, so thank you both very much for being, being part of this conversation tonight, and thanks, thanks again for the excellent work you're doing, on behalf of the disabled community. Because we need more people like you, you both, as well as staff at the London Centre. So
Thanks, Greg. Our
thanks
pleasure.
again,
Thank
and
you.
we, we, we will have you back again for part two.
Awesome. Yeah, there's lots of questions now.